But I digress. We should probably start with the intro that we never do. That's
that
actually not
we
an
never said
intro.
on. We should just like record that once and do it well, and then we just play that at the beginning of each of
Yeah.
the.
And then it just automatically like changes what color. Well, I keep like changing my setup. Like now my computer's over here. I have to point this way like this. And
No,
then
I.
I put a chair up here, so now I've got like the camera up here. So we'll see
Oh,
how this
it's
works.
it's a very cozy arrangement. Personally, I've been really drawn to. Have you seen? Oh, I can't remember what the name is, but it's this new AI generated thing where it watches you and
Oh, and it moves.
it automatically makes it so that your face looks like it's looking into the camera the whole time. And like, so even if you're reading text down here, like lower on your screen, your eyes never look down. You're always looking towards the camera. So it's like you're always speaking extemporaneously.
Yeah. You're just like, I
So
have memorized all of this,
yeah.
even though it sounds like I'm reading a teleprompter.
Luckily, most people, are probably only going to listen to these conversations. There's not much to see.
Yeah. Speaking of, welcome to the McLaughlin Minutes with the brothers McLaughlin, at least two of them.
The
Episode
two that are willing to record.
4, 5,
Uh, did we start at 0 or did we start at
some
1?
episode. I think the last one we talked about was the emu story.
Yeah.
If you're
I
if you're trying to remember what order these were recorded in, because you're weird,
that that won't be
it
a
was the
problem for
emu
the
story
people that
last.
listen to it because it'll actually be in an ordered list for them. It's only us who have time passing between each recording where it's confusing.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, I had to do this setup because I am so flippin' sore. So I had an experience much like our childhood, where a house project became a very large house project on Saturday.
Mm,
So as a lead in to what I think we should talk about tonight, which is manual labor.
fair. And
uh,
very fitting since I had my interview this morning and will probably be changing jobs.
there
Yet
you go.
again, a little farther away from manual labor.
Yes, is a representation of what we've learned and how far we've tried to stay away from it.
you can
So
you can make good money doing manual labor. You also get really tired doing manual labor in ways that you never will working at a desk.
I'm sure I'm sure that you can like build up strength. So my mother-in-law, Jordy's mom, had water coming into her basement.
Oh no.
Yeah, and so it was groundwater and it was like up against the wall. And so me and Isaac dug a 45-foot trench, um, 2 feet deep and 2 feet wide in the frozen tundra that is February of Utah right now, um, using like a splitting axe to like cut the line
Oh.
in the grass, and then using a pickaxe to shatter it and scoop the grass out of the way. Anyway, the reason that I bring this up is it reminded me as I was digging and throwing dirt, and like halfway through the day, like I had stripped a bunch of layers and I was like, man, like it would be so much nicer if it was warmer outside and I could be in shorts. And then I thought back to my childhood, our childhood really, of when dad decided that he wanted to dig he he wanted to dig um two ponds in our backyard, and not just ponds like people think, like a little cute pond. No, he wanted like a 12-foot diameter pond, 3 feet deep, with all the dirt mounded on the sides.
I always assumed they were 20. Seems like a nice round number we would have used.
No, it was definitely 12. But the surprising part is dad. So we had a decent sized backyard, and it was all lawn when we got there, except for like we had a couple of trees. We had a cherry tree, right? We had a
Yeah.
cherry tree out behind the garage.
There's
So
a large cherry tree and a large willow
on
on
the
different
yeah,
sides of the yard. And then as you went to the back of the yard, there was a line of these three really gnarled and nasty
Right.
like sticker trees. Like they
I
always seem to be pointy rather than anything
Yeah,
else. Were
they were
those
like Russian olives. They had like
were
thorns on them. They
were
were
they
mean.
were they apple trees of some kind?
No,
Because I remember
no,
there were tons of like those tiny little hard green apples or something like crab apples because we'd use those. We'd throw those at each other in the backyard when we were having apple wars.
yeah. So that was over the back fence. The neighbor had
That was their
apples.
tree that was knocking over on
No,
us.
we had an apple tree in the back corner. We had three.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Back next to the
Yeah,
shed. That one died pretty
that one died.
at some point. I remember it just being a log eventually.
Yeah, it was the one with the tire swing in it though.
Mm,
So so next to the cherry tree, so between the cherry tree, so if you're looking into our old backyard on you would look south facing into the backyard from the back porch, and on the west side you had the garage, the cherry tree, and then there was a shed in the back corner next to the apple tree.
there was a
And Dad
there was
decided,
a big jungle gym there first. There
oh
was
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
weird jungle gym thing that had like the horizontal tire thing and like the pillar that just kind of went straight up. I don't remember when we tore that down.
It was when we put in the pond slash
Probably that makes
greenhouse.
sense.
So Dad wanted one of the ponds on that side, and he wanted the other pond on the left-hand side of the yard, or the east side of the yard behind the willow tree. And we kind of had this, it was a flat yard, but we had like a hill that kind of came up and then flattened out right
Yeah.
off the back patio. And so Dad sent us to work. He got a stake and a 12-foot line, and I remember he dug the rim. So it was a perfect circle. It was beautiful, a perfect circle. But that was the end of his work. So he then handed his little minions shovels and sent us to work digging in the backyard. And I want to say, like, the first day we did fairly well, because like the first day you're moving stuff, like it actually looks like you're doing something. Like
Mhm.
moving the grass was hard, but at the same point in time, like we weren't saving it. So you're
Yeah.
just stacking it on the side. And like a 12-foot diameter hole is, it's a big hole, but at the same point in time, like it looks like you're moving a lot, so it feels okay. But after that green layer was gone, then it got fairly slow,
You
because if
really learn
anybody's
how
ever,
rocky the soil is in
yeah,
Bountiful,
if anybody's ever
Utah.
dug in Bountiful, Utah, like there's about a quarter of an inch before you hit a piece of rock. And so it just became like this arduous, trudging task to dig. And Mike, being the genius that he was very influential and conned his friends into coming over. We had Gerald that came. I don't know if we're supposed to use names.
I
We'll say Gerald.
I've been bleeping out the last names of everyone in the recordings. It actually slows down the processing quite a bit.
Sorry, we'll just say Gerald. I believe Gerald and Riley were the ones that came over. And it was really like a Tom Sawyer, or like, was it
I
Huck Finn that
I
whitewashed the
remember
fence?
it being very much Gerald. So we invited him over, and we're all out there digging, and he just wanted to hang out. And it's like, oh yeah, like you can come over and hang out at our place, and like we're all standing there, we're all digging a hole, and we all start talking, and we're all kind of slowing down, and eventually all of us are stopped and sitting around the edge of this hole talking to Gerald as he's in the center, still just shoveling away.
Sweating. I mean, it was summertime, right? Like it was like July, August time frame. So it's just hot outside. It's the heat of the day. And like we are all done. And Gerald is just digging away. I think Riley moved the shovel like 3 times and then ghosted. He just disappeared. Didn't say bye to anybody. But like we convinced Gerald to dig for like 2.5 hours, and all we did was give the poor kid Kool-Aid. Like it was the worst thing ever. Like he just, I don't know. he
Yeah.
was one of those, looking back, like he was one of those good kids that like tried desperately to be our friend, and we just
And
never.
we abused that.
Yeah, we abused the crap out of that. So, so as the story goes, that first summer is all the work we did, and it was late summer when we started because I remember the grass was decently dry, which made the ground even harder to work with. But we did, I think we did the first circle, and we actually got down. We didn't
we
get
we
three
hit our
feet down.
we
We
hit
got
our
two.
target depth, I think. It was
Well, we
it
didn't
was
we didn't get our target depth. What Dad ended up doing is he's like, well, there's a foot on the outside, and
there's a
so we
foot
have
of dirt
two
out
feet
there.
underneath, so it's 3 feet
3 feet.
total. And then he set us to work on the other circle while
Yes.
he built a
The
greenhouse.
the other side of the yard, which was somehow even more rocky. I remember we so I don't remember digging that hole super well, but that one we started digging down and it was really similar. There were tons of rocks in it. And as we're digging down, we eventually hit a pipe. And it wasn't
That's
like a
right.
normal pipe. It was like a clay pipe. And we all assumed that
No,
meant that it
it
was
was
like old and broken, and we ended up breaking a hole in the pipe as we were digging.
yeah, it was a big one. Oh my gosh. It probably was like a 12-inch pipe. And luckily it wasn't like a sewer
Yeah,
drainage pipe.
there was no pressure in it, whatever it was. So, um, yeah, I remember Nathan told me at one point that he poured gasoline in it and set it on fire, and he's like, you could see the fire so far away, like looking down through the pipe, which you can't really do when there's a fire
Yeah.
inside the pipe,
Uh-huh.
but
And when you listen to Uncle Nate, just take all of his stuff with a grain of salt, just like ours.
he just
I mean, we have
Nate,
our own stories, but
Nate was a
there's a little bit,
pyromaniac as well, so
yeah, there's a little more salt on some of our stories than others. So we dug the first pit, and then we were moving on to the second pit, and I don't think we got 2 feet down. I think we did 1 foot on that one,
yeah,
and like,
we barely got down, and we ended up, I think, refilling it part way. But
mm,
that one on that side of the yard, we had moved a lot of dirt, and so we didn't really have anywhere to take it. So we'd cleared out like the slope in the backyard because there had been a retaining wall. So we dug out the retaining wall, and we moved all that dirt to the
the corner.
southeast corner of the yard,
Yep.
and we started building up dirt over there. And then all of the
Because
dirt from these holes got piled over there as well.
Yeah, so dad wanted to have like a pond, like a trickle down pond. So the hole on the east side of the yard, he was going to build a greenhouse, and half of it would be exposed and the other half of it would be in the greenhouse for like a hydroponic system
Yeah,
with
it would
like
be
fish and koi and
we had like 3 levels, and it would be the hill we had built, we'd put a pond there, and then there was sort of this waterfall system down that would go to a river which we dug out and was about, you know, whatever the narrowest shovel we had wide,
yes.
and that sort of meandered down.
It's like,
I feel like we dug down a lot of that ground for some reason because it was really uneven by the time we left.
yeah. Oh yeah. So most people will get into a new yard and just be like, I wonder what the vision was for this. And I'm guessing whoever bought that house after us will
Well,
just find terrible
those
things.
were all filled back in. So
Well, they were,
by
but with with what is the question? And when
that's
they when they get exhumed is the other question.
that's fair. At least one of those pits was used for a pig roast, and also for burning documents, because
Yes.
that was a thing we did at that point. Was I don't actually know which documents. I don't know if those were from mom's work, from dad's work, if they were just documents in general. If it was just like leftover, we
Documents?
we were technically also burning garbage at one point in the backyard. With
Well, and in our
well,
defense, we just kind of burned whatever. Like I remember Nate got us all in trouble burning some metal tin that had like a pressure gauge or something in it.
oh yeah, that had some expensive something inside of it that made it in the fire.
Yep.
the the main fire that I remember was also with Uncle Nate. I was inside. It was just the two of us at home, and he was outside. I think burning documents. There was like it was
A
boxes of
pastime.
papers that he was supposed to burn, and so he's out there burning them, and I'm inside watching TV or something, and he comes running in. All of a sudden, he's like Spud, you got to come out here and see this, and I'm like, what? And like I run outside and he goes, look at this. And he has a little what is it? It's one of those small uh like contact solution bottles. And he goes, check this out. And he sprays that into the fire, and the fire just whooshes up the line. And I'm like, whoa, like what is that? He's like, I filled it with gasoline. And so I'm like, oh, that's really dangerous. And he's like, no, it's cool. Check this out. And he sprays it again, and that fire tracks back up onto the bottle he's holding. And Nathan does what anyone does when they catch fire. He goes, oh, geez, and he throws it down and stomps on it until the fire goes out. And then his shoes are on fire because now they're covered in gasoline. So he kind of stomps around, gets the fire off of himself, and he handles it pretty well. It's just sort of a knee jerk response when flames shoot up at you. But then I'm like, whoa, like that's a really bad idea. You're gonna hurt yourself. And I start walking away. I'm like, whatever. I'm leaving you. I'm leaving to your fate. And as I'm walking away, Nathan goes. He's like, hey, and he picks up the 5-gallon jug of gasoline, and of the can of gasoline, and he goes, dare me to use this one? And I'm like, no, I'm out. I'm walking away. And I get just about to the back porch when I look back, and
When the
Nathan
heat hits you.
goes for it. And lo and behold, that flame tracks right back up and gets onto the bottle and onto Nathan. Because the one thing I learned that night about gasoline and playing with it was you're always covered in gasoline when you're
Uh,
touching gasoline.
it turns out it's not burning the liquid, it's burning the fumes.
Yeah. So this fire tracks up. It gets all over Nathan, and he does the only logical thing. He throws his arms in the air, but he forgot to let go of the canister of gas before his arms were about here. So he has thrown this canister of gas on fire into the air. It's like spiraling out and spewing flames all over the yard. And so by the time it hits the ground, Nathan realizes that it's going to keep burning and it's going to explode. So he runs over and kicks it into the fire. So now we've got a plastic can of a 5-gallon can of gas burning in the trash fire. There's fire all over the yard. And Nathan is trying to stomp it out with his feet, which are still covered in gas from before. In fact, he was spraying the soles of his shoes with gasoline with the eyedropper and burning them and turning him off. So
I feel like I was on my mission for this part.
probably were.
I was not around for this. I'm going to just say that now. Plausible deniability. I know that it's past the statute of limitations, but I wasn't here for this.
So Nathan and I are now faced with the problem. The whole backyard is on fire, and we need to put it out. Luckily, we had, for one reason or another, placed a 300-gallon pond of water in the backyard. Now these aren't the set in the ground ponds. These are like giant, probably like 8 or 10 feet across, 300-gallon bins for water that are just open air. And we've got a little 2-gallon bucket. And so we run and we scoop up the water and we throw it on the gasoline. And that's the other thing I learned about gasoline. When you pour water on a gas fire, you spread the gas fire. We don't learn from this, though. We keep running back for more buckets of water, and we try to catch the fire. So you run up with the bucket and you quickly turn it over and try and catch the fire underneath the base of the bucket. And doing that, we end up putting out most of the fire in the backyard. The parts we didn't get to burned out on their own. So anyway, that was probably my most visceral memory of that hole before I think what would it be? Probably 6 or 7 years later, Mom and Arlo got like a little mini backhoe digger thing and like filled in the holes with the dirt from the corner of the yard.
Yeah.
Maybe it was earlier than that because I also remember on that spot where that pit was, Chris decided to try and grow a vegetable garden, and it turns out after you've dug up,
Salted the earth.
to grow vegetables you really need like good loam and like some really good stuff. What we had done is we had dug up essentially the mostly clay backyard that we had, and now that was the topsoil, was just
And
like packed
displaced
clay.
all
Yeah,
the topsoil.
no nutrients in this soil whatsoever. And Chris tried his hardest to get anything to grow in that ground. Like he tilled it, he weeded it, he watered it, he did everything you could possibly do, except for get fertilizer and like put down a layer of something that the plants could grow in, because we didn't know that that was a requirement or that we had essentially killed that plot of soil.
Again, the internet was not nearly as prevalent as it is now.
And sometimes you
we
don't think to look these things up.
we still
Well,
had Juno. I was
we,
dial up.
I I remember at one stage it was we had lost Juno, and Mom had canceled the Homeline subscription, and she would not get internet in the house. So at least from the time after my mission onward, there was no internet in the house. So even though the internet was around and it was very helpful at that time,
We
there just
didn't
wasn't
have
an
it.
account because Mom had access through her work, so she could use everything on the internet she wanted. And then I would,
And it was just an empty cost for all those kids going to school.
yeah. So I spent a lot of time going over to the library, either parking outside of it if it was too late at night, and just opening my laptop and working in the car on a wall really close to the building so I could pick up a little bit of Wi-Fi.
If you parked illegally on the east side of the building, you could usually, because that's where I would register for classes
Yeah, that was
at midnight.
that was a particularly helpful spot. We went there pretty regularly. Oh, yeah, that was good times
Yeah,
ish. So
good times.
on top of the initial hole that we dug, the one that got a little bit deeper, the plans as Dad drew them out was that we were going to cover this big pit. So we lined the pit with a big square, which always bothered me. We dug a big circle and then we made a big square out of railroad ties that we had found somehow. I think from a railroad.
Acquired.
Yeah,
They weren't paid for, if
yeah.
that's what you're trying to mention.
I'm not entirely sure where they came from, to be honest.
I always thought railroad ties were free.
As long as you can get them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we treated all of the spikes. But oh, those railroad spikes, we had so many of those as well. But we'd put out this square of railroad ties, and then Dad went out and bought a bunch of treated wood that he could build with, and we built half of a shed. And literally, like if you looked at like a peaked roof house, if you just cut it through through the peak, that's what the shed side looked like. And then there were just like 3 boards hanging off of the other side with some standing boards to hold them up. And that was where,
Oh, we put that insulation foam on there. Remember that?
yeah,
Because like the geese and the
yeah.
ducks, 'cause we had every kind of animal.
So we had put this up in preparation for there being a greenhouse, and greenhouses, I guess, need insulation along any walls that are exposed to, that aren't like the glass walls that you're trying to get light in through. And so we had put up this very expensive styrofoam insulation on the walls, and the geese walked by and they started eating it. And I just remember, like, it was like a week later we looked at it, and you could tell how tall the ducks were from one round of eaten off styrofoam, and you could tell how tall the goose was because he had reached significantly higher. He was working more up rather than around the way the ducks had been. So they ate off a good, like, square foot, 2-3 square feet of this foam at least.
Well, it was the best because it was just corners that like hit the edge of the pond.
Mhm.
Because in the center of the pond that never actually held water, um, they couldn't reach all the way. I think the goose could go across the bottom,
Yeah.
but nothing
Yeah, it
else
was
could
it was
reach
too
that high.
low to get to it. Yeah. We tried. I remember we tried to run the ponds at one point. Um, Dad had gone out and he bought these. He didn't buy like liners. He bought these big like formed plastic ponds, and so
Yep.
we dug out these big holes and we put the ponds in them, and we never backfilled underneath them to make it all like fit and
They
and be
and
stable.
they were specific shapes. So there was one that was like an hourglass
Mhm.
because that one we dug that one just south of the pond that was on the east side because it
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
part of
it
the
was part of the
river.
stair step.
Yep.
So we put one on top of the dirt mound that was going to be a little hill. We attached one of these, and these are
Oh,
all black plastic. We attached a
side note.
black plastic thing. Yeah.
Hold on. Side note to this. Do you know where those ponds ended up?
No. Where did they go?
Mom gave Mom gave them to me.
Really?
She gave them to me, and then Jordy sold them.
Oh, seriously?
It was
I
awesome.
hope you made a lot of money on those.
So we could have made more, but we just listed them. I think we kept them for we had them at the old house and brought them to this one, and then Jordy just put them on KSL, and I'm assuming someone kind of like Dad showed up to pick them up and like handed Jordy the money, and then like in his sweet tone is just like, I really wish I would have only paid like $200 for these instead of 250. And Jordy, feeling awkward, just kind of held her hand back out. And so the guy took $50 out of her hand and then took the pawns anyway. It's when I realized that my wife was a good/bad negotiator.
Jordy is one of the nicest people. She is not the front man for your business, though.
No, no.
Oh
She'll
man.
get you good PR, but she won't raise your revenue that much. So
Yeah.
yeah, but we sold those bonds. That was awesome.
Oh, that's really funny. Yeah, so we had dug those down, and I remember at least one of them, the hourglass shaped one, we got into the ground and we kept it filled with water because it got all murky and gross. Um, that was the one where we had those goslings. We had got like 4 or 5 goslings, and they were out swimming there, and someone had decided to sun one of the Burmese pythons.
They were full on geese at that point. So
No, no,
the
they
goslings.
ran away while they were still like before they were teenagers.
No, no, no. That was different goslings. That was multiple sets of goslings. So Dad found some Canadian geese goslings and brought them to our house, and we put them in the backyard, and they got away. And I remember being decently sad about that. But they left back when they were just fluff balls.
Yeah, the fluff balls
Um,
ran away and we never saw them again.
yeah, we never saw them again. But then we found some more goslings that I I think they were Canadian geese though. Were those other ones? Yeah, they weren't white. They weren't domestic geese. But we had, I think it was 6 of them, which, being our neighbors back then, I just feel bad for whoever they were because
to
it was
be to
like
be fair, I never understood why our neighbors didn't like us.
because
I did.
it was
I
like
didn't know it at the
being in
time. I get it now.
Yeah,
I
it's like
also think it's kind of mean to not like the kids in that household that clearly don't know any better.
yeah, well, we it's like living as an Egyptian next to Moses's house. You should be like, all right, we're gonna start a plague. It's gonna be bullfrogs this summer.
Bullfrogs. Fun fact. Turns out bullfrog plays last exactly one night. And then you
So
never see a single bullfrog again.
I think next week or next time we record, we should definitely do the plagues of the
The
McLaughlin
plagues
house.
of the house.
Because we definitely went through at least 7 like Moses. I mean, nobody had firstborn children that died, but there.
Yeah, and surprisingly enough, it like outside of in Mexico, it was never anything like ringworm.
Yeah. We definitely had the plagues of Egypt run through the
The
streets
household.
of the streets of Bountiful. If you talk to our old neighbors, they'll probably know
Yeah.
everything that we did. Yeah, but that pond, I remember that murky pond because we just let it sit there and fester and get mosquito larvae in it and just be nasty.
I can't remember if we put fish in that one because we tended to put goldfish in every pond we had.
We only put goldfish out at the horse property because they got mad at us. Remember, the angry Janet, whatever her name
Yeah.
was upset that we decided to put water out there because she had an actual barn and we had garbage property and a couple of garbage horses
She
and
was so
a pair
mad
of
at us. I I think it was. Oh right, I'm pretty sure with her it was she had been using our property to run her horses, so she would like let them out and let them kind of pasture in the property across the way, and then we showed up and suddenly there was a different lock on the gate, basically.
Yeah, she got really mad when she couldn't open the gate and she yelled at us, but it was property that we were renting, so
Yeah, for
it's
like
just when
three
people
hundred
feel
dollars a
entitled to stuff.
year.
Yeah, super rich people here.
Yeah. So there was that. But we did put fish in other ponds. I remember in that same big pond when Dad came home with the 50 baby turtles.
Yeah,
Um,
but that
we
wasn't
added
fish.
fish then. We added
Did we add fish
goldfish,
then?
and they kept eating all the goldfish. Like they would chase them down and eat the goldfish. I've never seen turtles hunt in packs before. I've never seen that many turtles in one place. But turns
Yeah,
out
they
if you
were
get 50 of them in 300 gallons of water, which sounds like a lot but really isn't, they move like flocks of birds inside the pond.
little red-eared slider turtles. They'll end your goldfish's dreams.
But
It's over.
yeah, the turtles that we got that we were supposed to sell, and I think we sold zero of, and we eventually just returned to the guy we bought them from and asked him to
No,
sell them for us.
no. Those turned out. That was one of the plagues because they got bigger and bigger, and then they got out. And like I remember finding one on the road, which was real sad because it
Mm.
was no longer a turtle.
The only thing I remember finding in the road was a chicken. And that was always a sad one. But it was also never the chickens I cared about. we had some white leghorns that weren't particularly friendly. Like
Uh, yeah, but that's for next time.
yeah. So
Yeah,
well
but that hourglass. Oh, are we running out of time?
yeah, we're down to 3 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess the last piece is we pulled out that hourglass eventually,
Mhm.
that pond and stacked all the ponds in the corner that eventually made it to my
My
house and then got sold on KSL. Um, but that hourglass, much like anything that we ever did in that yard, it never got filled in by us. So we pulled the ponds. There was just a hole there.
Yeah, a larger hole than the pond itself.
Yeah. And sadly, for another time, it became the shallow grave of the once loved sickly calf that we bought from the Spanish Fork auction.
I thought that was
Grave.
farther east. in the incomplete hole that we were digging for a different pond, and we decided it was too stony. And then we had like this really shallow hole that we just sort of sprinkled some dirt over poor old Larry. Well, poor young Larry, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For those of you keeping notes, the cow was named Larry in reference to the family friend of ours named Larry.
Larry.
Yep, because when our parents were first married, I think, they were keeping a calf in their living room behind the couch. And Larry had come over and he's sitting on this couch, and the cow either mooed or touched him, and he leaped about 6 feet off the ground. He was so startled by it. So
Which,
we named it Larry in honor of him, and it died like within a month.
yeah. Which, I mean, most people probably don't have cows in their living room.
Yeah, but
Turns out,
we had a pig once, so
yeah, turns out like you don't know those things when you're growing up in the household that we did. So
yeah,
I think we should go through pets or plagues next time.
yeah. Well, I mean, they're
Which is
mostly the
kind of the
same.
same.
It's, I mean,
Just on the
we,
reference of what you're thinking.
I would say like a parrot is a pet. 20 little parakeets is more of a plague.
Definitely a
And we've
plague.
had both.
And lost a mini.
Lost so many.
Well, for those of you keeping track of the morals of the story, if you're going to start a project, make sure that it's a doable project. If you're going to hire labor, don't pay them in Kool-Aid, because they will never come back again. And yeah, make sure to finish your projects, or at least fill them in when you're done, if you're not going to finish them.
These morals feel more and more like me trying to wrap up a confusing seminary lesson every week. And that's probably what you were supposed to get from what I said, so be good.
Don't judge the rugrat children for the household they grow up in. It's their parents' fault. It's not them.
Judge the parents.
Yeah. False traditions of their fathers.
All right. Well, till next time, you all have
Over
a
and
good
out.
one.
See ya. Hold please.
No worries.
All right, not that I'm going for like product placement or like sponsorship, but we should probably switch to Google Hangouts, because that way we could get like an actual hour instead of just a 45-minute block.
I was going to suggest Discord.
Discord?
Yeah. That's what I
don't
use for D&D.
That shouldn't be admitted. Let's cut that part out.
I play D&D with the most over-educated people I know.
Yes. Also, the problem with overeducated people.
I mean, it's that or surfing. those are the two things that I found all of the people I know are kind of into.
It's because surfing is one of those like rich people sports. You have to have time so you can ride the surf at the right time, and you have to have enough money that you can get to said surf.
Yeah, I don't know. My boss, he goes out like most mornings, even in the winter. I'm not sure why, to be honest, but
That's because you're
he
East
likes it.
Coast.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone
East Coast is warm water.
No, it's not. The Atlantic is miserable for months on end.
Compared to the Pacific, which is always miserable.
That's fair. But you just always have a nice thick wetsuit when you're on the West
Yeah,
Coast.
like it's just expected, right? Like East Coast, they're like, the water's warm. Like, it's not
Yeah.
freaking warm. It's still cold.
It's pretty warm in Florida, from what I understand.
We were there once.
Yeah, a long time ago. We were let's say I was what, like 12 at the time, because Mike was on his mission.
It was
So,
oh, it was right after Mike's mission.
oh, you're right. Mike was there. Chris wasn't. So I was probably 14 at the time.
Yeah,
Then
because
in the 14-ish range.
Mike saved all of the money that mom and dad gave him because he was leaving to Ecuador to go see his girlfriend.
Yeah.